Wild Force and Cyber Judge have been legal in Japan for just about a week now, and we're going to take a look at some of these preliminary lists that are popping up at City League tournaments. Wild Force and Cyber Judge will be making up our Temporal Fates in the United States coming out sometime at the end of March, and City Leagues are basically just like League Cups, 35 to 40 people, 48 maybe max players playing. So keep in mind these lists necessarily aren't the greatest because we're seeing top 16 and up, which means some of these people may have only gotten 3 wins out of their 5 rounds or even 2 out of their 4 rounds. However many they play, it is still a cool indication to look at some of these newer lists as we can prepare and see ideas that we can take and make our own come April when this set becomes legal for us. My name is Rahul Reddy. I hope you guys are enjoying this kind of content. Please like and subscribe if you are. It's our first look at the Temporal Fates expansion / Wild Force Cyber Judge, whatever you want to call it, and looking at some of these lists over in Japan. Notably, this is our first look at rotation with a lot of decks changing a little bit slightly with Poffin, VIP Pass, yada yada. Small changes, but then we have a bunch of new cards coming into the format, and we're going to see how that impacts the game, especially with cards like Path to the Peak that were so oppressive and Mew VMAX both disappearing entirely from the format. 2 huge powerhouse floodgates that were keeping, I guess, decks down in terms of how they wanted to play the game. So we might see some worse looking decks as we go. But remember, don't judge just yet. Give it some tries, give it some effort, and then see how you like about it. So we're going to look starting just for Monday. I'm going to just pull up a couple of lists. We're going to look at them as we go. We see a Chien-Pao list here. Pretty standard still. It's got the Kyogre, so you can snipe now. I think that card is still pretty cope. You don't really do much with it. 3 Poffin is a little bit... I don't like that because you just want to set up turn 1 all the time. So maybe just cut an S-Ball, go to 4 Poffin anyway. Poffin gets you Bidoof and Frigibax, but then S-Ball gets you Chien-Pao, Hands, and Greninja, and then the Ultra Balls gets you everything else. So I guess, yeah, got to do a little bit of this and that. Maybe you play like a Ditto in here instead of the Kyogre. So on turn 1, you can just get that guy down and becomes a Chien-Pao, ideally, or a Greninja, compared to something else. I do Prime Catcher is broken in here. 2 Pokestop is a little bit low, I think. No Cross Switchers makes sense. I think we can't really afford that anymore. 2 Rod, 1 Cologne. We're still playing Colognes with Prime Catcher. I guess you can go Prime Catcher, Cologne, make the play. So that's still reasonable. 2 Vessel. I think 1 Vessel is probably just fine. But I think this list is overall pretty solid. I don't see any like flaws with it across the board. You could probably cut down on Baxcalibur and like Candy to make spaces for stuff. Like more consistency cards or more Pokestops, just more cards to play the game. You don't need a ton of stadiums anymore because Path doesn't exist, but it's still important to have this. We see a Charizard list that was the runner-up. Pretty stock standard Charizard list. It's got the new Charmeleon in it from Paldean Fates. Rotom and Lumineon still making their pretty good appearance. I think Rotom is still incredibly strong in the new format. 3 Arven is something I don't like. You want to have 4 of that card. It's so important. Keep in mind these are best of 1 tournaments, though. They're playing the Max Belt damage thing. I don't know the exact name of it, but it does the 250 extra damage, which is pretty cool. But I feel like you just don't need that. Like, we just don't need that. Like, Prime Catcher just seems incredible, like so much better. Like, I just don't get it. This is fine, whatever. 1 copy of Mist Energy to attack for Giratina. I like that quite a bit. Heavy Boss, got a Collapse, no Artisan. A little bit weird on the consistency side. I don't like it a ton, but again, also 1 switch card for Radzor it's just cope. It's a lot of cope in this list. I don't like this a ton. Then we have Giratina still making an appearance despite losing Path to the Peak. You see a very stock standard Giratina deck playing 2 Crams again. You've got Poffins instead of VIP passes. Have your same 4 Nest balls across the board. You have a Vacuum now to get to 10 quicker if you can. You've got the Belt that does a ton of damage once again. Instead of Prime Catcher, I guess maybe the Belt is fine in this because your Cram can do a ton of damage. But again, I would just play the TM in this, the TM that does 280 from Paldean Fates, because you can still play into that 1 prize turn to do 280 with the Cram, so you can just focus on using Cram as like a multi-purpose attacker. I like the skateboard thing. I don't know what it's called, like Super New Skateboard, but it's really good in this deck, I think. Yeah, and then Beach Court I think makes a lot of sense. Just while you're doing your early setup, you can pivot around a bunch, keep your energies. You can go Comfy, Jet, Retreat, Comfy again, without even having to burn those energies off the board. So when you're 280ing, you can put them in the discard, or not discard, lost zone with like less effort. Don't need as many switching cards anymore. And Tina is still does a ton of damage. So it's like that part doesn't change. Another Zard list here. This is kind of spread out in a weird way. But this one's got the Gouging Fire in here. That's the most important thing to take from this list. No Rotom, just Lumineon. And then you have Gouging Fire to do 260 in the early game. So you can go Candy Zard, but instead of going into Zard early, where you're not one-shotting anything in the active, like you're kind of playing not as reactive anymore. You're just basically going straight into the Gouging Fire. Well, Bibarel will draw you a bunch of cards as you're setting up your board with 2 Charmeleons. You've got the TM Evos as well to set up your board and get to that position. Jet Energies make sense, I think, with this build because you do want to use Radzard and Gouging Fire like more openly in this build, and then getting Bibarel stuck kind of sucks if that ever happens. TM Evo is really good, I think, in this Bibarel build, obviously. Pidgeot, probably not, but yeah. Let's look at some of the top 8ers. An Arctina here. I'm not going to spend too much time on the non-top 4 lists, I think, but we'll just like breeze through them. Arctina with Iron Leaves makes sense to me. You get Iron Leaves to basically just clap up some Charizards if you can, put a ton of pressure on. And then you have Minior for like Snorlax stall and things of that nature. We have another Zard here. Nothing crazy. Once again, I think this is pretty stock standard. Again, that's the max. I don't get the max belt, man. I'm not a huge fan of the max belt thing. There's a Roaring Moon in the top 8 here. This Roaring Moon has a lot going on. It's got Roaring Moon. It's got the baby Roaring Moon. It's got Darkrai V-Star to get some stuff back. Hands to basically energy switch into it. There's no Moltres anymore in the format, which does the Galarian Moltres, sorry, which does suck a little bit. You have Mallow now, or the Mallow supporter. So I guess you can put cards on top of your deck and then Pokestop into them, but this list doesn't even play Pokestop. So I guess you would just put cards on top of your deck and then either Greninja for them or Mew into them, I guess, and then pull off your combo that way. There's no other way to like accelerate the energy besides Dark Patch anymore. So you basically just have to hit those energies. Darkrai V-Star gets 2 Dark Patches back, so you technically have 6 Dark Patches to work with, and then you have to kind of move them around. You're just never getting hands powered up. I guess you have 2 DTEs, but like still, man, like you have 2 Lightnings exactly. Like that's insane. I don't believe in the fact that we'll get this powered up. Another Zard. Zard seems to still be very powerful, king of the format. We have another Lost Box deck here, just Lost Box with big attackers. Prime Catcher giving this guy a boost. Poffins are great for the early game setup. They replace VIP passes like fantastically. Obviously, not finding Greninja is a little bit of a downside, but you have Heavy Ball and Nest Balls to find those pieces. Still, maybe you could play like one Ultra Ball in here too, just to get some bad cards out of your hand later in the game. But now Poffins are like playable throughout any point in the game, so it's not like a dead card in your hand like VIP Pass would before an Iono or before a Roxanne or a Judge or whatever. So you can just play those Poffins out of your hand and just thin them, and so your deck can just actually become only good cards at some point in the game. Arc, Gudra, Alolan Vulpix, just a lot going on, like the typical Arc attach attack deck that can kind of set up and play the game. Another Roaring Moon with Darkrai V-Star. Another Zard. Let's scroll down. Let's see if there's anything interesting in this pile anymore. Okay, there's a Great Tusk in this top 16. Great Tusk basically just mills cards off the top of your opponent's deck. So we're playing a mill deck while also milling ourselves simultaneously. So we're just trying to like mill our opponent as quickly as possible. But if they can just chain attacks, like 6 attacks pretty quickly, we lose the game. So we have stuff like Hand Trimmer to basically make it so they can't keep their hand at a large hand size. And like Iono cards back into the deck. So at some point, like we could even put Mimikyu in the active, chill for a little bit while they're like struggling to work our way around it. I think a lot of decks do have answers to Mimikyu, but if they don't, we have some time behind Mimikyu where we just build up our Great Tusk, put the tool on it. It goes to 200 damage, or HP, sorry, and we're just milling every single turn. Yeah, seems pretty good. Seems like a fun deck. I don't think this is better than like tier 3 or like tier C kind of thing, like C tier. But it's like a fun deck, like I would take this to a cup or a challenge and have some fun with it. Now we have the next one here with Chien-Pao winning again here. This is just another stock standard build. Only 2 Chien-Pao, which is kind of low. Kyogre is still making its appearance once again, but this one has more of the old school shell with the 4/4/4 of the search cards, the ball cards. The 3/2 Baxcalibur 3 Candy, which has become kind of staple in the West. 1 Gear is interesting as well with the 4-stop. This list makes a lot of sense besides only having 2 Chien-Pao. I just can't fathom the 2 Chien-Pao is correct ever. I feel like you just need it. Like you need a third. I feel like the deck just requires you to like have it, and it's one of the best openers in the deck. So I would just cut the Kyogre for that, or maybe even like cut a Gear for that. I don't even know. Like this list seems fine. Just I don't like only 2 Chien-Pao. Second place list, another Zard deck. Zard is again very popular over there. It's using the belt again. I just don't get the belt. I understand why it's in there. I just don't see the vision. I don't personally see the vision. Gouging Fire, actually pretty broken in here as well. I think does a ton of damage early game. Yada yada, a lot of pressure. I like that. I like just the card is cool in here. Another Roaring Moon in top 4 this time. This one's playing 2 copies of the Baby Moon, and you've got the Brute Bonnets to poison your opponent, get some fire going, cooking. 2 Squawks, so we're heavily emphasizing the turn 1 with 4 Shoes. So we're gonna see a lot of cards on turn 1 to get to those Sadas, and if we don't find a Sada, basically our game plan is just chalked. Like we just don't get to play Pokemon if we don't find Sada. Another Zard here with Barrels this time. Entei, I think, is probably a sleeper attacker in the new format. I like Entei quite a bit. I feel like there's a lot of merit for the fire typing, especially, and then also hitting for 220. Maybe 220 is just a little bit too short because some of the new guys have 230, like Gouging Fire. But maybe I think Raging Bolt is 240. So like I think we're a little bit short on like the damage we need to be doing. But with the Defiance Band, we can get there. But also with the Defiance Band on Zard, we can get to those numbers anyway. This one's a more basic Roaring Moon with the Be Revenge attack, effectively 70 plus 10 for each ancient card in your discard pile. This list is playing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 ancient cards. So let's just say everything is in there besides one Roaring Moon. We can cap at 300 damage, which actually isn't like terrible. But it's gonna take some time to get to that point of the game. So I feel like maybe we want another like early like big Roaring Moon to actually do some damage. But I guess like having Flutterman in the active does slow our opponents down quite a bit. We've got another Mill deck that did make top 8 here. This one's got the Explodorama, the TM over here. Another Tina here. This one's got Relicanth and a couple other. This one's got the belt too, man. I just don't understand the belt. I'm not a huge fan of the belt. I just feel like Prime Catcher's way better. We've got like a Sablezard here, but Sablezard with Bundle that can act as like a rope. I don't know why Mimikyu's in here. Maybe we just stall early. I don't know. Mimikyu's like a weird inclusion in here, but I do like the idea of Gouging Fire being like a big, beefy attacker we can use, justifying more copies of Gate, but it is a terrible opener. And if we have to open it at any point or use it early game, our entire game plan gets kind of derailed from the single prize game that we're going to be playing. But if Jirachi isn't as common, I just feel like we should cut back and play like a regular Sablezard deck and don't even need this. Let's see if there's anything else interesting in this one. There's a Future Box in here in top 16. A little bit of a pile. It's got the Iron Treads with the tool that can hit for fighting type weakness. You've got the 2 Miraidon with the new Miraidon, which I don't really like as a card. I think it's very mediocre. But Iron Crown, Iron Leaves, very staple combo. I think Iron Leaves is like really, really good in this format, honestly. Like it's got EXP shares too, so kind of cool. Bunch of tools we're playing off the back of that and Arven. So we can abuse like Town Stir plus Arven to kind of set up our board. But I can see how this deck looks like kind of a pile and probably plays like a pile. When we're not just like jamming a ton of damage and have a ton of one-shot potential outside of our like few attackers that we have to power up with Miraidon. Like we're always going to be one attack behind some of the other decks. Nothing interesting there. Let's go to this one. We've got hello. I'm sorry. We've got another Zard here. The barrel here. We've got the Call for Family Basculin. Sorry. I think this card is really cool. I think there is merit to playing this card at some point in time. I think it's got a lot of power to just help early setup decks like this one. And if, let's say you go, this one has no TMs, no TM Evo. Don't like that part, but I do like the Basculins. I guess we're just committing all into the Basculin turn 1. But I guess we could play, I don't know, like I think like playing one of this and one Evo also gives us options on turn 1 in case this guy's prized. Or we just open something that can't retreat, like Radzard or Entei, or like Skwovet, or I don't even know, man. Like let's just power up and like rock and roll, you know? We've got the single prize attacker. I like this version way more than the other version we saw. For the single prize attackers for ancient Pokemon, Fluttermane and the active. You've got the Koraidon that does 30 times a bunch of damage. The fake Salamence. This one's got a ton of like shoes and stuff to just keep going. You've got 12, 16, 17, 20, 24, 27. But also this one's playing single prizer, so you can kind of two-shot stuff a little bit more reliably and cap out the end game with a one-shot, which I do like more than the other one. Gimme Ghoul and Gang is a deck that I think is very good in the new format. This list is a little bit scuffed, getting 3rd or top 4, I guess, because it's got a 1/1 Palkia as well as a 1/1 Barrel. So we're kind of just going all over the place with diversity. I think Gholdengo was really stifled by path decks more than anything. Like I think its setup is actually pretty like disgusting with 4 Poffins, 4 Ultra, like 3 Nest. Getting Palkias is going to be a little bit difficult on turn 1, and Greninja to keep drawing some more cards if we don't find Nest or Ultra. But 4 Poffins still ensures that we can find our Bidoof. I don't want Bidoof in this deck. We're not playing, like I'm not playing Bidoof. Like Bidoof is not making it into my deck. And then we have the Gholdengo with the new Mallow supporter. We can once again stack 2 cards onto the top of our deck and then use Tasting. I don't know the actual ability's name. I'm just going to call it Tasting because that's what Slurpuff was. And then put 2 cards into our hand. The exact 2 cards that we set on top of our deck, so we can like chain this into something, go into a Palkia, get Prime Catcher, make a combo play off the back of this. After seeing a bunch of cards, so we could go draw, Mallow, put 2 cards on top, do the third and final draw or whatever. Now we've seen 4 additional cards from off of 3 Gholdengos, and we have an attack available to us with Make It Rain and can do a ton of damage. I like this deck quite a bit. The concept seems interesting. This is a Chien-Pao Arc deck. Too much, like this deck just has too much going on. You can't have Arceus and Bibarel in the deck. I think people will just target down your Bibarel, and the game like pretty much will end off the back of like Roxanne. No path anymore, I guess. Maybe it's fine, but I don't know. Like I just don't like when Bibarel dies. Like if Bibarel ever dies, like the game just feels really bad. So I don't like that. More Chien-Paos, more Zards. Here's our first Block Lax, or Stall Lax, I guess. This one's got the new Mantine, which replaces Echoing Horn, which says put a Pokemon from your opponent's discard into play. So if your opponent tries to sneakily discard stuff so Erica's Invitation doesn't get to them, you can always use the Mantine to put stuff back into play. You have access to new Airy, which says look at your opponent's hand and discard 2 items you find there. So Airy is from the hand. You can be very aggressive with that. And then MF Sister is from the deck. So you're basically just chaining these supporters if your opponent doesn't do anything and getting rid of like all the like good cards, basically like all their switch cards, all their like recovery cards. Like there's nowhere to run. The moment your opponent takes 1 prize, Counter Catcher becomes live. The game is live. I really like 2 Mimikyu because I feel like the deck should have been relying on that anyway at some point in time. Because like Mimikyu is just so broken. So if your 1 is prized and you can't find your Heavy Ball, it's so much more difficult to play the game. There's no Peonia anymore also, so you have to like rely on just having cards where you need them. Which is also why I don't know if Radzord is necessarily great. Like if your opponent actually goes to 1, like what are we actually doing with Radzord? Like how are we utilizing this in a way that could win us the game? Like I don't really know. I think adding something like Chi-Yu would also be pretty good to this list because Chi-Yu has the attack that lets you mill 2 cards. So like if you want to start getting aggressive later in the game because your opponent's not doing anything, and you've milled a ton of resources and you just want to speed up the game, you can go Chi-Yu and just start milling. And if your opponent takes 2 prizes on that, then you have Radzord to clean up the game or clean up their last attacker potentially, or just you can go back to stall method and actually Block Lax them out of the game. It's another version of Block Lax here with the Tauros that gets rid of stuff from the discard into the Lost Zone. We have a Luxray to be aggressive in the early game, Mist Energy to prevent just getting T-Nut or Sableye or whatever. This one's playing more thin supporter line of like the disruption supporters, but 2 Airy, which I really like. I think 2 Airy is kind of staple, like being able to go Airy into Airy potentially, like back-to-back turns if your opponent's not doing anything. You can just rip so many resources out of their hands so quickly, which I just like think is so broken. Like your opponent like has to play, like you don't want to play these resources, so you have to be like, okay, please don't have the Airy, or my Super Rod becomes completely useless, or like my Palpad or whatever. So I like that quite a bit. Another Future Box here in top 16. This one is playing the Heavy Baton Pass, which lets you move energies from the active to the discard, or to another bench Pokemon if you have 4 retreat or more. So Iron Hands, if it goes down, we can just move those energies around. Go into Iron Leaves. There's an Iron Moth in the deck too. Bunch of cool attackers. This one's focusing more on hands. I do like more of a focus on hands because I think hands, after a Miraidon attack, should be able to clean up quite a bit of things in this format. Maybe playing a Valiant or 2 just to get like 20 extra damage as you're moving stuff around could be really cool. But maybe that 20 extra damage is better placed by putting the tool onto Iron Hands. I don't know. Like I want to tinker with this idea. I think Future Box is really cool. More arc pile stuff, more arc pile stuff. Let's go to the next one. We see another Lost Box like pile end up winning this one. Kind of the big basics Lost Box that we're used to, similar to old school Turbo. Now you have no like path, I guess, to worry about, but Iono is still pretty prevalent in a lot of decks. Looks like a lot of fast decks other than Zard are doing quite well in this format. So I think that's like an early indicator that like consistency is king, but also keep in mind these are best of 1 tournaments, so I can't really judge too much. We've got a Toad Scroll version of Zard here. Not only that works. Belt, again the belt. I don't understand the belt. Another Chien-Pao here. We got Mill in top 8 once again. More Zards across the board. I haven't seen anything like crazy innovative in any of these Zard lists that I want to steal. Our first Gardevoir has made its appearance. We see that Gardevoir is no memory skip anymore, which is a little bit, or not memory skip, Mirage Step, which is a little bit unfortunate, but this version's playing 3 Screamtail. It's committing so heavily to Screamtail as an attacker that Manaphy is like probably the worst thing you would expect to see. And then you have the Fluttermane as an attacker too, it looks like. No Zacian anymore, which does suck. Like Zacian was so good for the deck. This is playing the Cape, which does make your Screamtail like quite formidable. But there's no copies of Moonlit Hill, which is interesting in this list because I think Moonlit Hill and no Greninja either. Those are both interesting decisions. I feel like both of those are probably wrong decisions. There's an Airy in here too. I don't really understand what the Airy is in here. We're gonna have to work on this. This Gardevoir list, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this and workshop it in a little bit. Not in this video, but at some point in life we will. This is our first Raging Bolt list. This one's playing the Sandy Shocks to accelerate a bunch of energies onto the board. No harm, no foul to play some grass energies because we can just discard them at some point in the game if we find them off of like Sada. But we can Sada on some grasses and go into Iron Leaves to have a one-shot response into something like Zard or Roaring Moon, which I do like quite a bit without exhausting our entire energy pool on the board. So Leaves can help us trade pretty efficiently if we need to. That being said, I think this deck is still going to have a problem of no good one-prizer. I see Slitherwing, but I don't think Slitherwing is like necessarily the answer. But I do like Raging Bolt. I think the deck is like really cool. We have our first Miraidon in the new format. Our first look, this one's got the energy stickers to just kind of high roll a little bit and set up our board a little bit more than it is. 2 hands, so we're coming heavily to the hands. 15 energies, 15 lightning, 2 DTE means we're just going to commit hard. We go for the hands turn 1, get to the hands turn 1, and then we go into EXP share. There's no peony anymore in the format, so we can't aggressively set up for that anymore. So that's our best bet to do it this way, I think. Makes sense. I like the escape board tech idea, so we have like more free retreat options. 1 town store, I think 1 stadium is fine because there's no path anymore, but I do think like maybe it should just be beach court. But I guess there's 3 tools, so this might be better. I don't know. I'm torn on the idea. I like free retreat quite a bit in this deck, so anything could happen. Another feature box deck. This is a little bit more of what I was envisioning in my head, where we have like all this like slew of attackers that can do something. The Iron Treads for fighting weakness, Iron Valiant to like do some extra damage, maybe attack. Hands being the cleanup crew, Leaves coming in to just coming in hot at some point, and Miraidon set up our board. So still looks like a pile, so we got to figure that out. But yeah, then we're going to Dragon Star, where they played Gholdengo for a first place win. This one's got the Basket Legion to shuffle the energies back in, do a ton of damage. That away. So it's like Basket Legion or Palkia, I guess, are your 2 options. Basculin is also an incredibly good early game like setup card. So if you do end up going second and getting into the Basculin, there's only 1 Poffin, which I really don't like. But if you had more Poffins, you could find your Basculin early, retreat the Gimmighoul into it early, and then just kind of set up your board off the back of Basculin, and then Basculin goes down, you go into Gholdengo, and then you play off the back of your Gholdengos. This one's got 2 Adamans, which is like discard 2 metals and get some stuff. Don't like that card. Lady is also like super mediocre, and then 3 Letter of Encouragements. But like this is an interesting version. I just don't like it, how it's built. More Roaring Moon. I think Roaring Moon is still very powerful. Now the path is also gone. You have just so much agency in the game to just like run away with early games and just get your board flooded in a really aggressive manner. And we see this from both these lists. They're both opting to play the 1 prize guy at some point just to maybe clean up the game, which I do like. I do like having that one prize card option to clean up the game or offset the price rate at some point. We see an Arctina again with the Iron Leaves. Some more pile decks. Aha, here's a fun one. Lugia is back. I'm the Lugia guy. We've got the Snorlax. We've got Chinchino, which has 70 times the number of special energy attached to this Pokemon. So you are basically just going to flood that guy up, send him in there, and then just start popping people with your Chinchino. I guess you have infinite damage with it, but which is why we have to play 1,000,000 energies. But I don't know if that's like good. Like I feel like we should be playing like other stuff in here, like Radzard maybe with Luminous, or just another like a second Snorlax maybe. Maybe even second like Mew, or Squawkabilly. Like I don't know. Like no Burnett feels kind of bad. So you have no great way to discard your Archeops besides just Ultra Ball Aroma, like or Research. So with losing Burnett is actually like I think really impactful because now Luminion for Burnett isn't a viable strategy anymore, which was quite literally like how the deck functioned. So I don't know how like real Lugia can be as we move forward. Some more goofy decks across the board. We see another Lost Box Turbo. It looks like Lost Box Turbo or like Big Basics Lost Box is still pretty much king over there somewhere in Japan. We see Lost Box Tina again here, but this one's playing a little bit more artisan focused, getting basics out turn 1. We have the Lax to kind of come in and do a ton of damage for mirror matches. I think Lax could be a sleeper pick back in Tina or Lost Boxes just for this like one purpose. And I guess you have the Belt, which everyone likes to play for some reason. Then we have the Metang that does energy acceleration with Dialga. So I guess Dialga is technically back. If you're a Dialga enthusiast, I would just not be a Dialga enthusiast if I was you. Um, just just like a just letting you know, man. Just don't do it. More Gholdengo has got we have the two versions. One's got the Basculegion, one's got the Palkias with the Dunsparce to shuffle itself back in, draw 3 cards. Um, I like the Mortys in this deck. I think Morty is actually really, really good in this deck. Not a fan of the Adamant again. I think Morty, Mallow, really, really, really good in this deck. Boss, Roxanne. I don't know if you want to play research in this, maybe like a couple Ionos for the early game, but I don't know. Morty seems really, really good for this deck. I like Morty quite a bit in here. Palkia, again, seems pretty broken. I like the idea. More Zards, nothing crazy in these lists. There's a Toad Scroll in this one. 2 Toad Scroll in this one. One for Tina and one for Chien-Pao. Still don't know if this is going to work the way you want it to work. There's Arceus. I guess we're just not actually the Zard I thought we were. We're just Zard, Arceus, Pidgeot, Toad Scroll. A lot of cards. A lot of setup pieces. If you get everything off, the more like power to you, man. Another just stock standard Gholdengo list. I think Gholdengo is very powerful, like I mentioned a couple times. More Moons, more Gholdengos. Winter Guardy list here. We've got the other Guardy in here. Refinement in here. But we also have a Mimikyu for some stall purposes, maybe. Just get the board rolling. Drifloon in here with the cape to have our potential infinite damage once again. We have the Moonlit Hill. Like I said, I think this card's broken. I think you just want to play it. TM Evo is cool because you can kind of have a slow start and just TM Evo on turn 1 if you go second and just try to set up your board that way. However, it's like really unreliable to find because you have to Arven for it. So I don't know if it's worth the spot plus playing Arvens. Like, I feel like Poffin, Poffin Great Ball, that's just such a, weird feeling engine, I feel like. I don't, losing Level Ball and Fog might hurt this deck too much. I don't know. Seems interesting, though. We got another Miraidon here. We got an Elekid in here. I don't know what that guy's in here. We're going to ignore the Elekid, but the rest of the list looks pretty stock standard. I think this is, a pretty good list with the Judges, the Beach Courts, playing EXP shares, kind of emulating the shell we already have. Not, breaking the grain in any sort of way. Yeah, there's no, grain breaking here. Another Lugia here with heavier Chinchino. No Snorlax this time. Vitality Band to do a little bit of extra damage. We got the Cape. I don't like the Cape. This is maybe where the belt comes in. This is probably a belt occasion. Jacques is actually a supporter that could make a ton of sense in here. Jacques into Ultra Ball, so you can just get them into your hand. So it's a pseudo Burnett, but you have to have the Ultra Ball. Morty could also be good to discard one. I don't know. This is all makeshift Burnett. I miss you, Burnett. Come back home. Another Lugia. Same as before, kind of more or less with the Jacques. See some more mill cards. Here's another Future Box. This one's leaning entirely into Iron Hands with only one Miraidon. That can't be right. I feel like you need at least 2 Miraidon. What if one's prize, man? Your game is just cooked. Don't do that. It's got 4 generators. Never mind. Maybe our game's not cooked. I changed my mind. Gift Energies is actually a really cool touch to the deck with the baton so we can move energies around. Interesting idea. I like that quite a bit. Something along that lines maybe is where I'll start my Future Box idea. Some more decks here. Another look at... Hey, this one's got the Chi-Yu. See, I mentioned the Chi-Yu. I was a genius. Chi-Yu, but no Radzard. So I guess we're just committing to the Chi-Yu mill. Don't do the Radzard. I think Radzard is just a terrible opener, so I just wouldn't want that card in my deck anyway. But Chi-Yu is pretty cool. I like that quite a bit. Let's see if there's a Guardian with a Wordier in it to close out the game. It just acts as a Zacian. I guess we don't have a Zacian that exists for us. So if we can go into Wordier, maybe we can win the game that way, where Wordier is our Zacian to close out a game. I don't know. I think it could work. It makes sense. You just can't accelerate to it. You just have to put all the energies out everywhere else. But in theory, you should have enough places to put the energy. You can go 4 to a Curlia, 4 to a Gardevoir, just slam it and go in. As long as we're not just getting absolutely dunked on at some point in the game. Another Arc Charcadet deck. This is just seems interesting with a bunch of Arc pile cards. Hands doesn't get to be used until we're at 1 prize because of Luminous. Wait, we can't even use hands. No, I guess we can amp. Never mind. Scratch that. How do we even get this powered up? I guess Charcadet just move the fires. There's only 5 fires. I don't like this, man. Just get me out of here. Get me out of this one. But yeah, that's everything that's from the first week of city leagues over in Japan. Let me know if you find anything interesting or what you want to try. These lists are really scuffed now that I think about it and how deep we've gone to this video. I think I tried to fix every single list we've seen besides Charizard. So the moral of the story is Charizard's still good. It's the beast, but just give me some time to cook. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.